I had a few people that commented on my video that was done a little over 2 years ago now, and kind of asking for an update on this machine and how it's working out. And all in all, I'm pretty happy with this machine. It does just a tremendous amount of work. We probably run it, I'm going to guess, probably about 50 hours a year. And given what it does, it's just kind of takes somewhat of a beating, and for the most part keeps ticking. A couple of the weak links on it are probably the hose, and I'd say when you get your hose, you want to make sure it's long enough, and by that I mean when you do a sharp left-hand turn, there needs to be a little bit of slack back in this area here, and not so much up here, because it'll just pull straight when it's turning. It'll just kind of straighten out. But what happens is when you're doing a sharp left turn, this area right in here is bending quite a bit, and so you might get the hose might split there. So I bought an extension kit. You can see that it's spliced right there, and the hose is holding up pretty well for me. I found some old sections of hose, and I split it right here and kind of reinforced that a little bit, and then another old section of hose right there where it kind of drags on the ground a little bit, just kind of glued that on so that it's whenever it's dragging on the ground, it's rubbing on that rather than the hose itself. A couple things that I noticed just here today, using it here in the fall of 2020. In the back of this hopper, or whatever you want to call it, DR put a reinforcement canvas, and you can see where it's stitched here, and that piece of reinforcement canvas basically just kind of wore out, because that's right where the chute throws all the debris. I tried gluing on a piece of aluminum sheet metal, and I think it just, maybe my glue job just wasn't good enough, but it didn't stay. So I think maybe the next thing I'm going to do is try taking a piece of maybe glue on carpet or something like that, and I'm probably going to maybe glue that in place and maybe pop rivet it with some washer headed pop rivets both side as well. Just today I noticed that this seam is splitting down here, and so I'm probably going to glue that together with some urethane caulk. And anybody that's used urethane caulk, like a Sonaborn NP1 or something like that, if you caulk that and gently squeeze it together and let it cure out for about 2 days, it'll hold pretty well. I think the reason that might have started doing that was somebody commented back on the first video and said, hey, you don't need to have this canvas loose on the back end, just leave it buttoned down and it'll work fine. And so I decided to try that, but I think what happens when you do that is you get such a tremendous pressure built up inside that thing that it's kind of like a balloon just trying to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I'm going to go back to basically leaving it like this and letting the air blow out the back end, which is what I did the first year, and it works just fine. You open this up and look inside, you can see that right there is where that reinforcement canvas comes from DR, and it just kind of got wore out and came off, and you can see daylight through this area right here, which tells me that basically the debris may be hitting there, and it's hitting over here too a little bit. So I think I'm going to try taking a piece of carpet, or maybe I'll buy some canvas at a canvas shop or whatever, and reinforce that area a little bit so that the debris is hitting that area up there, and it'll live long. You might even just consider that perhaps the canvas on that total enclosure is just somewhat of a wear item, and you're going to have to replace it every 2, 3, 4 years or something like that. Or at the very least, you're just going to have to pay attention to the seams on it and all the other things to make sure that it holds up well for you. No problems at all with the engine or the battery. Like I said, this is the 3rd season now that we've used this thing. A couple things I do when we pull it out every fall is I make sure I check the air pressure in all the tires and get it pumped up to what the tire says it'll hold. I grease all the axles on it. There's grease zerk on each wheel there. Change the oil about once a year on it, stuff like that, just normal maintenance. but the engine's worked out great. The battery's still doing fine. It's got an electric start that we really like, because we're probably gonna, every time we pull this out and use it, we'll probably use it for 1 or 2 days and then let it sit in the barn for probably 2 weeks and then come out and use it again for 1 or 2 days. We're running it pretty hard during those 1 or 2 days. So if I didn't mention before, I think I did, but up in that area there's kind of a canvas double up on the factory enclosure, and that thing is worn out. And what I did is I took and pulled all the old stitching out of that area. And then I found this piece of carpet runner down at like the Home Depot or any kind of big box Lowe's supply or anything like that. And it's carpet runner. The back side of it's kind of rubberized. And I'm going to take that. I already tried this once with aluminum and it just didn't work out. It came off. And I'm going to take and fit this piece of carpet runner up into this area, and I'm going to take and contact cement it on. So I'll clean this up with some paint thinner and get it clean, and then put a couple coats of contact cement on that, and a couple coats on the rubber side of this carpet runner, and then glue it up in there and give that a try. So I've cut and fit a piece of carpet runner. It's about 15 inches square or so, and I put 2 coats of weldwood contact cement on the back of it. It's kind of porous, and I let the first coat dry and then put on another coat, and then I put 1 single coat inside the container and kind of let this stuff dry down a little bit, and then go ahead and adhere it into place, and then we'll see whether or not it'll actually stay there while the machine's running. Well, yesterday I took this Master Seal NP1. It's a urethane caulk that you can get at a high-end building supply store, maybe not at a Lowe's or Home Depot. You might have to go to a regular contractor supply for it. But anyway, I glued up this seam that was splitting, and when that cures out, it'll be like a rubber almost. And we'll just see whether or not that's enough to keep it stuck together or not with all the force that goes on back there. Well, since doing my upgrades or repairs on this machine, today it's November 6, 2020. I ran it probably about 10 to 12 hours. So where I put this reinforcement using a carpet runner right there, it's worked really well. I contact cemented it on there, and it's held up well. So now when the stuff blows out of that hole and hits right there, it's not destroying the rest of the container. So that carpet runner patch worked really well. Outside here, where I did this caulking of this seam, this seam was broke loose from there to there, so I used that NP1 caulk, let it cure 2 days. Probably letting it cure 3 days would have been better yet. That's held up well, so those two things work pretty good. This reinforcement of this hose, it's got good things and bad things. One is it keeps the bottom part of the hose from eroding away, but one bad thing is this part right here will snag on any tree if you don't turn wide enough or whatever. That part will snag on the tree. So I'm not so sure that was a good idea. But other than that, I'm really happy with this machine. It's cut the amount of labor to do leaf removal by probably 95%. This is the pile of leaves that we've got on the second cleanup. There might be one more minor one left, but I probably have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 dumps of that. So this is a great machine. I'd buy it again in a heartbeat. So I've just concluded season 3 with this DR Leaf vacuum, and I thought I'd give a little report of how it's holding up. All in all, the machine's doing pretty well. There's a few weak links. The hose as supplied by DR probably it's certainly not of the highest quality. It's adequate for sure, but it's not of the highest quality. And I've had trouble with them breaking right in here up next to the blower, and I've had trouble with them breaking right here by the moor deck. I've bought this 8-foot urethane hose. It's probably the highest quality one that you can get. It's an aftermarket thing. DR does not supply these. It cost about $200 shipped to the house. I'm going to start off season 4 with that hose. It's supposed to be more impact resistant, more flexible. So what you want to do is you want to size that hose so that in a sharp left-hand turn, when the hose would be stretched to the maximum, you've got just a little bit of slack in the system. So that's the way you size that hose. The other things that I did and had to repair this year, earlier I fixed this seam that it had split from there to there on the back end, and I used a urethane caulk for that, let it cure for 2 or 3 days. It's held up really well. And the other thing is, you can see the outline right in this area here. It's supplied from the factory. On the inside of this container, there's a reinforcement of that same material. It wore out into the end of the second year, and so I patched that by taking and putting a carpet runner. I'll open it up so you can see it here. I contact cemented on a piece of carpet runner right there, and you can see where the discharge from that chute hits that pretty hard, and it's holding up pretty well, really. So if that wears out for you, what I would suggest is you take a very sharp knife and carefully cut all the stitching out and get that out of there, and glue in a piece of carpet runner, and it'll hold up very well for you. As I mentioned earlier, the engine and all of that mechanical part is working very, very well. I'm very happy with this machine. Altogether, between myself and my father, we've probably got, I'd say 2 to 3 acres of leaf pickup, and we run that across that 2 to 3 acres probably 3 to 4 times every fall. So this thing does a lot of work for us. I'd buy another one for sure anytime.